While Wallace's techno trousers wander off into the sunset, you're invited to come behind the scenes with Wallace and Gromit and their director, Nick Park, to find out what's inside the wrong trousers.
Well, let me introduce you to Wallace and Gromit. Here's Wallace, and here's his trusty, very loyal dog, Gromit. Wallace is generally the more stupid one. Gromit is much more sophisticated and intelligent. He's also the more sensitive one as well. He's a really loyal friend of Wallace's, and that's his problem, basically, because Wallace is completely stupid and very insensitive. I mean, in a way, they are the same character. They're one character. They're the two halves of one character. I don't know quite where that comes from. I mean, sometimes I think Wallace is based on my father and my dad, and because he was very much, he is still very much an inventor. You know, he spends his time in the shed making things out of wood. In fact, like building the rocket in Grand Day Out, I remember once we bought this old caravan and stripped it down to its chassis, and he built this kind of box caravan on top, and we all went on holiday in it, the whole 7 of us in the family, and it was a bit like, it was kind of wallpapered, and it was like a little home inside, like the rocket. You know, no questioning whether it was practical, we just kind of did it, and that's what made, you know, my own childhood so exciting.
Everything seems to be under control.
Well, I do feel they are part of my personality, yes. I think Wallace is the kind of happy-go-lucky, you know, not a care in the world side of me, and I think Gromit is the more down-to-earth, questioning everything. Will this work? Should I do this? And the constant doubting, and the side that feels sorry for itself all the time and gets trodden on and is sensitive, but goes along with everything. They are friends of mine as well. It's as if they have a life of their own, and you're constantly aware of the things they would do or wouldn't do, as if they are bringing their own personalities into it, and you're somehow meeting them rather than creating them. Every idea you have has to be in a sort of agreement with them. Well, I started filming A Grand Day Out about 1983, so they're actually 10 years old. But they existed before that as rough sketches in all sorts of sketchbooks. I wrote a short story. In fact, Gromit was a cat when they first started off. And he turned into a dog as soon as I started making films with them. Wallace particularly was much more stereotyped. He started off as being closer to that goodies idea of the Ecky Thump, you know, northerner. As soon as I started to animate him, he became more of a character.
No cheese, Gromit.
And then recording the voice of him with Peter Sallis, that became more interesting as well, because I began to build his character around the voice. In fact, we always do the voices first, and that gave me a framework on which to put the character of Wallace.
Not a bit in the house.
First of all, I'd seen Peter Sallis on Last of the Summer Wine. For some reason, he was the obvious choice. I didn't really even think of anybody else.
Oh, she was going to take me for a haircut. Can you imagine? At my age, the unisex hair boutique. I'm not even sure that I've got unisex hair.
I wrote to his agent, and for a very small fee, he did, you know, really as a favour to a poor student, he did the voice.
Oh, Gromit, that's it, cheese. We'll go somewhere where there's cheese.
Wallace and Gromit have had quite a large impact. They're really well, the first characters I've really put my heart into, that I really have started to have a kind of relationship with, really. They gave me my style, really. The eyes close together, the wide mouth, the very exaggerated mouth movements, and Gromit's kind of looks of frowning and all his expression coming out of his eyes. it all started off with Wallace and Gromit. These are some of my very first films. Shot on Standard 8. What's this? 1973. This is called Rat and the Beanstalk. When I started all these films, I was 13. And between 13 and leaving school, I just churned out one film after another. Probably between 6, 7, 8 films. I shot this in the window in direct sunlight. Didn't have any lights. Here we are, Rat and the Beanstalk. Get it in focus. As you see, very basic animation. These were just felt cutouts moving. My hand appeared there. There's the beanstalk. And along comes Walter the Rat. This was my first ever animation. The first time I'd ever seen anything move. And there he goes up the beanstalk. Reaches the clouds. As you see, the sun went behind the clouds there. That's why it goes dark. And for some reason I can't explain, he finds a bottle of cider. Picks up the bottle of cider and automatically takes a swig. And along comes the giant. There he is. Slips. Bit of a cameo. The end. That's it, a day's work. My first film. Actually, that's not as bad as I thought. I find it interesting to actually see the way I was thinking at the time, and also it's interesting to trace back how certain themes have gone throughout my work and keep re-emerging as well. When I went to the National Film and Television School, I started a film called A Grand Day Out, which I overshot my deadline there and I ran out of money. And at that point, Aardman Animations here in Bristol offered me work. Well, while I was working on the Grand Day Out, I worked on various things such as Morph, various commercials. We did the odd pop video like Peter Gabriel's Sledgehammer.
Sound running when you're ready.
With Creature Comforts, I decided not to use actors and not to write a script as such, but to go out and record ordinary people in their homes, ask them questions which would somehow get the kind of answers that animals in the zoo would give if you were able to go into the zoo and interview the animals.
Well, sometimes you can't get out and about as much as you would like to. You're stuck in for some reason, like I'm stuck in today. And then, yes, you get bored and you get fed up with looking at the same four walls.
Even though A Grand Day Out and Creature Comforts were both nominated for the British Academy Award, Grand Day Out won, in fact, it really surprised me when both films were also nominated for the Oscar.
My room is a bit too small, really, and I've got so much stuff in it that if I get anything new, there's just nowhere to put it.
There were 3 films nominated altogether, and mine were 2 of them. At the time of the Oscars, I was actually offered work on other projects, sometimes feature film work, sometimes television work, but I did have a pet project at the back of my mind, on the back boiler, to do back here in Bristol. And though the other offers were tempting, I did actually want to work with Wallace and Gromit again, and I thought they really needed to have another film made with them, and that was The Wrong Trousers, which I decided to come back and work on. Well, Wrong Trousers started off with the old sketchbook again. Started making sketches. You can see this book is just full of ideas for that film, most of which you won't see in the film. But I remember, as you can see here, I started off by, I had this idea for a train chase that could take place on the living room floor, on the model train, and I started sketching that out. I did lots of different versions of it, and that was basically the germ of the first idea for the film. Plus, then this other idea came about where we would have this lodger coming to stay at Wallace and Gromit's house. Well, I thought the lodger could be a penguin. And then we thought, well, what can Wallace and Gromit be doing? They've got to be, they're inventors. they built a rocket in the last film, what can they be doing in this film? And I had many ideas, many of which you can see in the sketchbook. They built flying machines and all this sort of thing. And in the end, I thought, well, it could be some kind of robot, and that developed into the pair of trousers, the Techno trousers. Yeah, several animators worked on the film. I got to work on the breakfast sequence in the dining room. Well, before I arrive on set, Dave, the cameraman, has set everything up and lit the set and made it look good and set up the camera and taken all the exposures and set everything, and basically leaves it to me to get on with the animation. The model makers and set dressers and art director have normally done all their bit as well, put all the props in place. This is the dining room scene, and it's the scene where Wallace and Gromit get together for breakfast, and it's the scene where cracking toast Gromit. I first of all have to listen to the dialogue. I listen to the way Peter Sallis says it. It's all his inflections, and it's very important to get into character, and I listen to the track a lot of times. You know, we record the track first, of course, and I say it with him constantly. I play it back on a tape recorder, and I'm constantly saying, cracking toast Gromit, and you're acting it through every time, and you're observing the way your mouth moves all the time. Some people use a mirror, but Wallace is so stylized, I don't tend to use a mirror. I just go for kind of wide, extreme expressions, and often from narrow to extreme all the time.
You're not cracking toast, Gromit.
I mean, first of all, he's got to chew the toast, first of all. And you've got to get some nice mouth movement. And then I've got to think, well, what does Wallace do with his hands? And I think back to Grand Day Out and the kind of character that he is. And my characters always like to whittle their fingers a lot, and I like doing that. And that's quite easy to do as well, the whittling of the fingers. It's quite a simple sort of movement. And then as soon as he's tasted, he's delighted. And as soon as he's tasted the toast, he kind of goes, cracking toast, Gromit. And he kind of winks at the same time.
You're not cracking toast, Gromit.
Film is basically made up of lots of pictures, which we call frames. And when you watch a film, you see 25 of these pictures per second. And when you record the soundtrack of Wallace speaking, that actually runs at the same speed as the film. And that means that if I want to make Wallace say a word, like, for example, in Cracking Toast Gromit, the word toast, takes about 8 of these pictures. That means I've got to do 8 moves to actually make Wallace just say the word toast.
Toast.
Come on, Wallace, open your mouth. Do as you're told. A second and a quarter of dialogue will take probably about half a day to do. Normally we get through about 4 seconds a day, something like that, of dialogue. If there's no dialogue and it's just moving around, then it's a lot quicker to do. And the film is 30 minutes long. So I try to keep as much dialogue out of shot as possible. So whenever you can find a way of, like, Wallace holding something up in front of his face, like reading a newspaper, then that's fine. Fine by me. That should take care of the fingers. And his arms are slowly moving. And we'll see what happens with that, basically. I've just got to check that on here. That's better. He's about to say the "ah" of cracking. And I like to get Wallace to go really extreme. I'm going to have to take the teeth out for this. It's a bit like being a dentist, actually. In order to get his mouth wide enough, I've first of all got to get those teeth out. Oh, God. And this is where I am in danger of moving the entire set. I keep dropping tongues and eyelids down the front of the characters, like under tables where it's inaccessible. So at the end of a day's shooting, you can find a whole pile of eyelids and stuff under the table. Okay, now stick them in his mouth. This is the hard bit. I've got to get them in place, stick them in so they don't drop out. I'm going to put him a bit further back because that's how you say the K sound, I reckon. K. Well, I reckon anyway. Yeah. So now I just have to put some pressure on the bottom. Again, just to make him put his teeth together. I mean, this is my theory of dialogue. Other animators may have different... I think they do have different theories, actually. That's why dialogue, it tends to take on the style of the animator. So hair there on his ear. There we go. Let's have a look at that. That's not bad. I use this little eye tweaker, which is basically a paper clip. And that goes, the eyes are beads which enable me to stick this little thing into his eyes. I tend not to think ahead frame by frame very much. I tend to just think of the frame I'm doing, and kind of everything really falls into place as you do it. I act through the movement quite a lot, and I listen to the soundtrack a lot. But I don't really have anything more in my head than what I'm actually doing at the time. And I think if you just concentrate on the actual frame, on that actual 12th of a second or whatever, or 25th of a second, then everything else falls into place.
Not cracking toast, Gromit.
Okay, this is the museum set, which is the biggest set in the film. And as you see, it's the most complex as well. And if you look closely, you'll see that most of the props, the model makers have had a real field day. In fact, most of them have been Wallisified in one way or another. In fact, I didn't actually do any animation on this set at all. It was all by my colleague Steve Box, and this is the character he animated.
Nick asked me if I would animate him in this new film, Long Trousers, which was quite a challenge, for the penguin has no very deep expressions, hasn't really got a mouth as such or eyebrows. It's a very bland face, but it actually worked out quite useful for his character. He's quite a devious, kind of thoughtful character in the film. He's the sort of mysterious lodger that Wallace gets in to help pay the bills without giving too much away. The way that he moves, the way that he walks was just as important as the way that Gromit's eyebrows would give him expression. So with the penguin, then it could have been very comical. So right from the start, talking to Nick, we decided that he should walk as smoothly as possible with his arms down by his side, no expression. So you know there's something going on right from the very beginning. He's not giving anything away, but you know there's something going on inside.
I think the penguin very much reflects Steve's personality, actually. In lots of ways. Sorry.
I think you animate, if you're constantly thinking about the way that your animated model is going to act, you're mentally thinking about it all the time, then you will walk like it and move like it. You know, I mean, to look at Nick, sometimes you see Wallace in him, or vice versa, maybe. Maybe because Nick is thinking about the way that Wallace will emphasize something.
Yes, that's from the beginning of writing the film right through to storyboarding it and shooting it. I think on a film that takes you that long to shoot, you get sick of it. You get sick of the film. Though every shot is a new day, it's a new scene, it's fresh every day, and you've been looking forward to getting to that bit for a long time, and so it doesn't get tedious in that sense, but you do get tired of the. It's just so arduous, the whole thing, and yeah, I'm not. Even though you get tired of the film, you don't get tired of the characters. I still want to work again with Wallace and Gromit. You know, I want them to make more films, and I'd like to work with them and direct them again.
All's well that ends well, that's what I say.